I guess we all can continue to learn things. So again, this is Jeff Scott. My contact information is below. This is video number 2 of what will probably be 5 or 6 videos. This one is, I entitled it Unlocking the Power of HGSI, Meet the Designer. And, designer, it's kind of, you might consider it a boring file cabinet, and it's not as exciting as scanning for great stock picks and for looking at charts. And I'd be inclined to agree with you. Then again, I've now used it long enough to realize the power of what's in that product and how it makes my life so much easier. And what we're going to do tonight is take a look at what I'm talking about. So as always, I always start with a disclaimer, only because if I had a lawyer, he'd tell me to do this. This is for educational purposes only. If we look at specific stocks, it's in the spirit of education. Everybody is muted. I can see your questions if you have any. And as you all know, I am truly independent. I'm an HGSI homer, but I'm also a TradeStation homer too, and I don't get compensation from either of them. So the objective today, this is the second session in preparation for the South Florida meeting. My major goal with this series of web sessions is to spend the time of learning how to use the software tool online before we get to South Florida. And then when we're in South Florida, we can spend the time trading and using the tools and supplementing HGSI with other tools. And to some extent, I'll follow the flow of where you guys want the meeting to go. I've got a number of things on the agenda planned, but I've built in time to go in multiple directions. I mean, I once, I won't say I got pissed, but I got a little bit irritated because, in any product, people renew, people don't renew. And there were a couple people that didn't renew HGSI because it wasn't making them any money. And I sort of laughed at them because this is a software tool. It's not a trading plan. It doesn't incorporate money management. It doesn't tell you when to buy. What I use it to do is to help me understand what the markets are telling me as to be long or short. I use it to help me find the stocks in the best industries. And I use it to corral some of my favorite momentum indicators like the Morales and Catcher, Bible gap ups, pocket pivots, et cetera. And I make money. I make a lot of money trading. But it's not just because I've learned how to use HGSI. You also have to understand the other parts, such as money management, that I mentioned. So this is the designer, and the little red box defines what we're going to talk about today. And below the panel is what you get when you open it. So I'm going to go into what each of the buttons do on the designer, the file and the tools section, and then I'm going to show how I use the designer to import, export, and everything else that I do. And for me, and frankly, you can just look at those groups here. These are not smart groups. These are not automated groups. They're groups that I've built out every Sunday or Saturday for the last 5 to 7 years, and they have meaning to me. And it's where I fish from to find the big winners. Now, you don't have to use my groups. You use your own groups. But I use combinations of HGSI scans, TradeStation scans, Metastock scans, IBD lists, MarketSmith lists. And the beautiful thing about the designer, and I'm going to show you how as we go forward, is everything is stored here for as long as I want to keep it. So topics for tonight: database structure, smart groups, managing user groups, importing and exporting, whether they be text files, to and from Excel, how to use with Metastock, which needs an asterisk because Metastock has changed their data format, and also how to use EdgeRater, not how to use EdgeRater, but how to use HGSI to populate lists in EdgeRater. Some of the value-added functions in HGSI under the designer, the group inclusion filter, which was a topic for Ron and Ian's program this month. If you've been on any of my webinars, you know how important the group inclusion filter is to me. The GPA, something that I use on a nightly basis to understand what's working in the market. You see, if you watch my weekend reviews, how I use it over the weekend. And then how I interface with my trading programs, whether it's TradeStation or Thinkorswim. So that's my agenda. I think I can get done with that in an hour. A couple of housekeeping notes. Everything that I'm going to do between now and the day after the meeting is going to be recorded. These meetings I'm doing Camtasia, or excuse me, I'm doing GoToMeeting. And the beauty of these meetings, if I flub the recording, I can always go back and pretend you're live and record it again. During the live meeting, I'll have both a HD video camera as well as I'll Camtasia the screen. In New York, I wasn't really happy with the quality, although you caught the whole story and you have a picture of the projected screen. But I think based on what I learned from Ron at the HGSI meeting, by using Camtasia, it'll be a pretty high quality and almost professional output. Anybody that attends the meeting, the Florida meeting, will get a copy of the videos at no charge. If they're not too big, I'll put them up for download. What I did for the New York meeting is I offered them, again, at no charge to all the attendees, and they sent me a USB stick, and then I mailed it back to them. Anybody who went to the New York City meeting and you're on this call as well, I sort of respect the fact that you guys paid money to come listen to me talk, and therefore I don't forget you. You'll get the opportunity to buy that video at a discount. I can't give it away to anybody just for the fact that the people that are coming down here are paying good money, but you paid good money for New York, so there'll be I'll come up with a fair fee. I'm deciding whether or not I'll allow non-attendees to purchase, but if they do, it'll be at least twice as much as what I charge the folks that came to prior meetings. Housing for the South Florida meeting, I thought I'd be lucky to get 15 people. Then they make you personally guarantee 60% of the rooms. So I was on the hook for 9 rooms. And if I pushed it to 20 or 25, I would have been on the hook personally for 12 to 15 rooms. Well, of course, we've already used up all the 15 rooms in the block. I got 3 more rooms added today for people that emailed me, and hopefully tomorrow I'll get the block expanded. It's no problem, they have rooms, but if the block fills up, then they want to charge you $100 more a night, which the meeting planners and I are all in agreement. We'll get that taken care of. Anybody that's coming to South Florida, and I'll probably say this a couple more times over the next couple weeks, I sent you an email today requesting the date you arrive, what flight, airline, and what time you're due in. And then I'm going to put together an Excel spreadsheet and circulate it or stick it in the Dropbox, because if you're going to come over by cab, it's about $40, $45 with a tip. It'd be nice to share it if there's 2 people coming in around the same time, and I'll include phone numbers on that unless somebody objects. So without further ado, let me go to the slide that's got the plan, move it to the other computer, but this way I'll remember what I told you I'm going to do. All right, come on, there we go. Yeah, I know several of the Florida guys are getting excited for their three-peat of the Heat. First the Heat got to win, and I believe that they will win this game. I believe that the Heat will beat whoever they're playing now, the Pacers. But those Spurs look damn good, so it'll be interesting. Oh yeah, a little hint. And I don't want to sound like Mark Cuban today. If you haven't heard his interview, it's getting all kinds of press. He sort of, I thought he came off actually pretty intelligent, and what he said made sense and wasn't necessarily overtly racist. But Mark Cuban was being Mark Cuban and trying to force an issue to be discussed. Up and down South Florida, you have I-95. On the coast of South Florida, up and down, you have barrier islands. The barrier islands are the nice place. So you got Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, Palm Beach, where I live, Singer Island, Jupiter Beach, and so on and so forth. The area, so you have the barrier island, and then on the inside of the barrier islands, you have the west of them, you have the intercoastal, which is a government protected waterway. And then you have the mainland. Now, there's a narrow strip of nice properties on the mainland, and they usually have boats and are on the water. And then up and down the coast, between I-95 and that narrow strip of land, before you cross over to the barrier islands, it can be pretty rough. So when you're driving your taxi, absolutely no concerns, no worries. But if you're wondering where I put you, it's quite beautiful once you cross over the bridge. Take my word for it. I have a funny story to tell you at the meeting about that. A question came in about bringing a USB stick. If you bring a USB stick, you may go home with the movies, or I will ship it to you. That's a great idea. I think I had people buy big ones. I'd probably buy either at minimum a 64 and maybe even 128. Best Buy sells one. You don't need the Super Turbo USB 3 one, but you can buy them now for 60 to 80 bucks or less. All right, let's go on to the show. And also, if you're coming to the meeting, don't bother eating for the week before, because you're going to eat a ton while you're here. So the designer is often ignored, doesn't get a whole lot of credit, but in some ways, it's one of my favorite parts of HGSI. And why would I say that? I first started using programs like Metastock and AIQ were two of them. And they're great charting programs, perhaps. They were in their day at least. But the problem is they don't maintain the data. And so you had to create your own data. Every time there was a split, you had to be careful to make sure that you did the split, or else your charts looked kind of funny. If stocks went in and out of an industry group, you have to make your own changes, or in the case of AIQ, and the same thing with Metastock with third parties, I was able to buy quarterly update disks that would fix everything, but then I'd have to wait another quarter. So one of the things that I really like about HGSI is up here on the reference groups. You do not do anything to these reference groups. You can use them, you can drag them, you can do all kinds of things with them, but you don't maintain them. The program does it for you. They currently use bar chart, I believe, for data, and they use Morningstar now for the user groups. So when you look at the industry groups, and Ron and myself and then George, who's the real designer of the program, had a emailed conversation about what group Apple should be in, and whether it's a telecommunications, whether it's a computer, or it's retail. Bottom line is, it's what Morningstar thinks it is, because that's the way it is in the program. So just to point out what you have here very quickly, some of it's self-explanatory, all Amex, all NASDAQ, all NYSE. I hardly ever use those things because most of what I want is below, but I do use all securities because if I want to fish from the big pond of all the stocks, then I'm going to use all securities. And you can see all securities without a filter currently has about 8,000 securities. I've seen it get close to 9,000 and as little as 7,000. If you go through a deep recession, you'd be amazed at how many stocks disappear because they become delisted or pink sheets. It tells you under component lists, if you want to know what the components are of any major index, what's currently in the NASDAQ 100. This might be important, especially if you recognize that about 2 months ago, the NASDAQ 100 sucked, and it led the market lower. And I don't know if you made money today. I had one of my best days ever today because I started nibbling about 10 days ago on some out-of-the-money calls on CMG, Google, and Netflix, and those three have just gone crazy this week. They're all part of the NASDAQ 100, at least Google is, and Netflix is, and Google, Netflix, and the other one was Chipotle, which may not be in here. Maybe it's in the NYSE. But the bottom line is you have to know what group is working. And when you know what group is working, you might want to go searching within that group and find what they are. Now, what's also pretty fascinating to me is that the program, and I'm not going to say that I know without a doubt that it's up to date on a daily basis. I'm going to assume it's not, because they have to wait for the various funds and ETFs to report changes in their makeup. But it does a damn good job of telling you what's in the various ETFs. So, for example, Direxion high income shares. Right, so it looks like it's basically just has one thing. That doesn't make sense. Let's look at something that here it is, CBOE Gold Index. You can see the stocks that are currently within the gold index. Now, I might not want to see indexes in the list, so I might go into my filter, and filters will be another lecture, but I have a filter here that basically says, is a group index equals no? And simple filter says, if is a group index equals no. Okay, so it's going to take out the indexes, so I should just see a list of the stocks that are in the gold index. You can spin off ETFs. This is kind of an interesting ETF because it takes stocks that spin off, which have been outperforming in the market over the last several years. So you can buy a basket of stocks that have spun off. If you want to start looking at things like what's working, value versus growth. Now, I looked at the IWD versus the IWM this week and showed that the value, the D, was doing better than the M. But you could start doing spread charts comparing any of these things. So you can, and I really suggest that you do what I recommend here is go fish. All right, go take a look and see what's there, and you might find something that matters to you. So you could compare the IWF to the IWD, the Russell 1000 value to growth. There's so many different, you could compare any component of the S&P to anything else. So it's really a neat piece because it goes through all the major, updated frequently ETFs and shows you what's in them. KBE, it's a lot of different banks. Now, if the KBE is really outperforming, you would be looking at what the components were and perhaps looking within the warehouse view at what the strongest components were. So enough about that. Again, all of this is managed for you. There's nothing you need to do except know that if you want to ferret through those, this is where they are. This is not the components of each ETF, but rather all the ETFs, and allows you to compare one ETF or another, ferret through, again, for ETFs that might have specific technical or fundamental changes. The exchange indices, well, you know what? They're a group, so I got to make sure I turn my filter off. Something to stick in the back of your head. If I don't see what I think I see, it's probably because I've got a filter on. So then again, nothing exciting here, the major indexes. Industries and sectors. Now, I use these constantly, but I use them down in the user group. But basically, automated for you are the components of each of the industries. And this is important because a new stock comes into the market. It'll probably be unclassified for a short period of time, but ultimately it'll get classified into an industry group, and you don't have to worry a thing about it. It's all done automatically for you. And so when I do my top-down investing, I'm definitely looking at the industry groups. As you can see, there's 197 of them. Now, major industries, there are 48. And what the major industries are going to do is they're going to, they're going to identify some of the, obviously, the major things that you might look at, and it's basically rolling numbers of things in together. So oil, gas, and coal is rolled up. There's 334, and I suspect that you would find that there are several different industries up top in the Morningstar industry groups that coalesce together to form the major industries. Now, one of the advantages of the Morningstar groups versus the bar chart was that we went from 140-something industry groups to nearly 200. And there were a lot of things that were lumped together, like solar and semiconductors, that really didn't make any sense. Sectors, well, industries roll up to sectors. And so the top one here takes each sector and shows you all the stocks in a given sector. The next one, sectors by industry, you have each industry rolling in to the sector, and then you take that sector, you can see what the industries were, and then within each industry, you can go and see a list of the stocks. So there could be times when you want to do your scanning within this file versus the sectors. And then, as I mentioned, you'll get things that don't make sense. And there's quite a few here. There's 1,813. Now, if you look at the symbols, there's a lot of funny symbols here. A lot of things that have preferred shares. You look at the AGION, and you've got a number of these must be funds. All right. So they're not your standard stocks. Occasionally, a new stock may get in here until it's classified appropriately. But the bottom line is, for the most part, these are preferred shares and other investment vehicles and not your traditional equities, hence unclassified. Major market index components, it's sort of building on what you could have found in index components, but it's narrowing the field in that here's what's the Dow 30. Why does it say 31? Simple. I must have an index or no index on, so I put my group index equals no, okay, and what we have is 30. The Dow transports, well, you all probably are aware that the transports have been on fire. Anybody that was on this week, I called Greenbrier before it popped the other day. Is similar to Trinity, and it just has earnings later than that, which I know because I own them both, and it had a nice pocket pivot or Bible gap up yesterday. Watson Utility Index, and again, the major indexes are here. So there are times when I'm going to want to be looking for stocks within a specific index, or I might want to be looking at an index for whatever reason, and that's when I use this. Now, the major market index, before I open my big mouth, let me check something. Yeah, these are the reported major market indexes, and so these are the things that we look at in the top-down investing. And the problem with the reported indexes is that things like the S&P 500 don't have volume. But there's a way around that, which I will show you. And then lastly, really good market breadth. So you can look at advanced declining, highs and lows, not just of the market itself, but you could actually break down your breadth by type of exchange. So I would argue that that first thing, the reference group, might be worth the $599 by itself, even if there's nothing else that you use the program for, because it gives you a resource that you can export into other programs, that it's managed for you with a fairly with a very good and exhaustive group structure. The secret message I can also tell you is sometime this year or early next, we should have the ability to get a price refresh during the day. It won't be streaming live quotes, but we should be able to get updated prices so we can run our analysis on. To me, that's very exciting, and then I'll have to wonder about some of the tools that I bought elsewhere. But since it's not streaming, for now, I'll use both. So I would think of HGS reference groups as your public library. You can't write in the books. You can read them. You can take them out. You can photocopy them. You can take notes, but you put the book back on the shelf. Skip the smart groups for a second. The user groups, when you first download the program, you're going to see very little. You're going to see nothing until you do the Woodward and Brown user groups. And by the way, for all my newbies who are sitting and looking at your program and saying, I don't see that, I don't see that, a couple of suggestions. One, George changed the installation procedure so a lot of the add-ons are included. So if you haven't used the program much and built anything yet, you might want to uninstall and reinstall and get the new add-on structure without doing a lot of work. The other option is you go under Help. Actually, I've got to go this Help. Hold on a sec. Over here, and I think it's under, yeah, all right. So I'm out of Designer and back into the main toolbar. Under Help, it says Add-ons. And if I had my Explorer there, you would see it takes you to this page here. And these are all the add-ons that I use. The new starter set includes a number of these add-ons. These are critical, Ian and Ron's. I like to think mine are becoming important as well, and obviously Gil and Chris's. So if you haven't done the add-ons, again, either remove the program and reinstall it, and they'll be there for you, or just go to Help, go to the add-on page, download them all, install them one after another with the program not open, and then open the program, and it will go ahead and everything will be in the right place. So the user group then is your file cabinet. In your file cabinet, you buy it from the store, you bring it home, HON or whoever makes it, and it's empty. And then you go and you fill up files, and you start to fill up your file cabinet. And the reason why you have a file cabinet is it's hard to ever find anything when you get piles of paper in the closet. Now, my wife would point out that I have both, and I have probably more piles of paper in the closet. So each week, I open up a file. And that file contains all the different user groups that I want to create. They roll up into one weekly group. Then, all I have to do is drag what I created into my archive weekly group, and it'll end up right here. And I've got the 11th in one of my other computers. And so I've kept all of my archive groups, and every once in a while I clean this out so they sit on a disk, but they're there. And so I can always go back and ask a question or back test. But for now, what I do is I found a shortcut. So I won't say I'm anal or OCD, but I do it the same way every time. If you watch my webinars, it's the same way every time, because that's how I get good at it and I don't make mistakes. So I have the same set groups that I look at on a weekly basis. So what did I do is I built out a blank file cabinet here with all the groups in it that I'm going to use. And then I basically, all I have to do is drag it up to the user group, and it makes a copy of it. And then this one will be I'll be doing this weekend, so I'll just go ahead and rename it here, 05-25-2014. And so now I've not only created a new user group that I can start populating, it already has all the base groups in it that I want to use. And I'll do some dummy population when I get to the importing and exporting. At the meeting that we did in PV, and we'll do a similar thing as one of our exercises on Sunday, is I wanted to build an early warning system. And I basically do this in PV, and then I get up at the front of the room. This is the March and the October meeting, and I go through my 40 or 50 suggested stocks to be in our leaders index. And then we create the index. And as I talk about in my meeting, again, I got to bring my index back. So I'm going to turn off my filter. I create a list of stocks, our own list. It doesn't follow anybody else's rules. And you can create your own index, which is really fascinating. So, you know, as much doom and gloom, as much as my portfolio took a little bit on the chin, and your portfolio may have taken it on the chin as well, our leaders from March are going sideways. And you know what? They're going sideways, and they're sitting now in an area where the moving averages are coming together. This is a place where I expect the market to take off. Now, I'm not bullish without a conscience right now, so I've got a lot of, I mean, I'm a little bit careful, but I mean, I have a big account. I was up $87,000 today in my account, and my wife's mad at me for telling you that, but I am obnoxious. Why? Because 2 days ago I said all in long. When I stopped, I felt that we were at a point where we were potentially going to have a big reversal. And it was a lot of Netflix and CMG and Google, and then sometimes it's just lucky. I own a big position in Bonanza Creek, and they had an acquisition of some property today. They were up $6 or $7 a share. So there are a lot of things that made today a really good day for me. It's not to say that over the last 2 months I haven't had my bad days, but this index is really designed to give me a sense of what the overall market is doing, of the market that I trade, which are the high growth type stocks. And those that are fans of Morales and Katcher know, I mean, these are no different than the types of stocks that we look at all the time. We talk about in the in Morales' web forum as well. So creating your own user group and then your own index is pretty simple. So everybody type in your favorite stock right now. And I'll give you just your tickers. I'm not going to say anybody's names. I want to see at least 5 or 7. Keep going. Come on. Boy, so I own the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 6th. There's a repeat that I own. I own that one. Yeah, these are great stocks. All right. So now here's what we have. I'm going to create a user group. So I've highlighted user group. I hit the file and the plus. It says add group. We're going to call this Jeffrey webinar number 2. And now I'm going to add stocks. Now I'm just going to look at your list. And you all know what you gave me. There's one I don't know, so I hope it's not a wrong ticker. So let's go over. We got a GMCR. So I'm going to go into the symbol box, and I'm going to type GMCR. Boom. I've got a TPLM. Boom. NFLX. Boom. MXWL. Boom. ILMN. Boom. FB. Boom. QCore I put in, but it's a takeout, although it continues to go up, and I have to understand the takeout better. Then we have a couple of repeats, THRM, We have Facebook, which we already had once. So you don't get duplicates when you put them in. You only get credit for one. Let me just see what else we got from you guys. JRCR. I do not know JRCR. So I'm assuming that's a real ticker. Let's see what JRCR is. Newbean Real Estate Asset Income Group. Nope, that's not J. There's J. All right, so that must be a JRCR. All right, I think that's a wrong ticker. And ANIK. All right, that's enough. All right, so I just put together with your choices. There's a lot of duplication. All right, I like Seagate. Put that one there too. 10 stocks. And these all happen to be stocks that must be moving right now because you're all aware of them. I created a group. Now I'm going to hit OK. So you notice it created a file here called Jeffrey Webinar number 2. And it's asked me if I want to generate an index for the group. Sure. I now have an index. So let's say that this was the stocks that we thought were the leaders of the market right now. Then one would expect to see a lower left, upper right pattern. You do that. These are clearly, would you love to own stocks that look like that right now? Pull back to support. A little bit of testing going on here. And now off and running, although a doji today after gap up. That's what a leader would look like. So we've now created an index. Now, if this was your own portfolio, perhaps, maybe you'd want to create an index of your portfolio and watch it on a day-to-day basis to get an idea of how things are going. You know, maybe you'd want to compare your index to the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ or the HGS 100 or the IBD 50 so that you knew that you were at least in the right place and you were outperforming them. Or maybe you just create an artificial index like we do twice a year at PV and I do at my meetings of the leaders at the time, because you may own some of these, but if these are truly the leaders, when they roll over, then you want to be out of the market. And that's why I create the indexes. Let's say that, all right, I'm just going to create a quick file. Over the weekend, I ran Code Blue, which is one of the warehouse views, which we'll talk about either next week or the following week. Here's Code Red. And these were the dogs, or the stocks that had bearish signals fitting a lot of the Morales and Catcher stuff. And these were from the weekend. So it's obviously been a strong market, so they've probably done okay. And I'm going to copy those. And I'm going to make a little file here. We'll call it new text document, and where to go? I'm going to call it Gilmo Weekend Shorts. And then I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to find it on one of my other monitors. And I'm going to paste it, and there's the stocks, and I'm going to, all right. So now what I've got is a text file. So I'm going to go into I'm just going to use this directory because, not that one, the one that we just created, Jeffrey Weber number 2, because I can kill it. I'm going to hit a plus, so I'm now going to create a subdirectory. And I'm going to call that subdirectory G-I-L-M-O, Gilmo Shorts. And I'm going to load list. And it's going to bring up my desktop. And I'm going to find my list that I just created of Gilmo Weekend Shorts. And one could not be found. So let's see what that was, XTXI. I might go and figure out what that was. But there's the stocks that we pulled up from the Gilmo Shorts. Now, I would do that. I'm not sure an index is meaningful, but I'm going to look at an index anyways. The reason why I would do that is because I now just imported them into HGSI, And yeah, I mean, this is an ugly index. It failed here at the 200. These are the stocks that you're talking about on his calls. The thing, you know, you want to short them when they come back and fail at the major moving average. So no surprise that the index is ugly. But the reason why I would build that, the reason why I would build this is because now I can just double-click on Altent Newstel, and I'll just go into an easy chart to look at. It's breaking down below the 200 despite a great day. It's a $3 stock. It's hard to short that stock. Autoliv, not ready. Interesting, cheap stock. Darden, you know, Darden's been in a sideways pattern. They've got some fighting going on over Red Lobster or something right now, or Olive Garden. You know, this market fails, and what's the likelihood it's failed at once, twice, really 3 times, 4 times, 5 times? Anybody think that if it runs up to the 200, it fails again? Yeah, of course it does. And that's why, you know, so I'm building my watch list of potential shorts for when the market rolls over. So I put this list together, again, not to tell you which to go short, but to show you how I import it. So a question came up about the IBD 50. So I'm a crazy person. I haven't met a product that I could say no to. So it's a good thing that I have created some wealth because I spend every penny I get. Well, not every penny. My wife would kill me. So I have a subscription to investors.com, and I'm sure many of you do as well. And so I could sign into my subscription and sign in. And then what I do is I go into their e-tables, and I could IBD 50 index. I can go export to Excel. I'm going to save it as on my desktop. And the problem is I already got it, so I don't want to screw up my record keep. IBD 50 test. And it's going to save it as a worksheet. And I'm going to show you another neat way of putting things in to HGSI. You go find that. Got the worksheet right here. Now I'm going to open up that worksheet. And I could just highlight the stocks, copy, go back into HGSI. All right. We're going to create a new group. We're going to call it IBD 50 test. And I am going to paste list. And there they are. And I was able to just paste them right into this group. Let's look at an index, and we should see a high-flying index or an index that sold off, and maybe it's turning around. If you are a MarketSmith, yeah, obviously that's a beautiful-looking index. If you are a MarketSmith subscriber, you can actually do exactly the same thing. And if you haven't seen that before, I'm happy to show somebody. Now, it's so easy. Now, I will offer this to anybody that wants it. Don't ask for it just because you ask for everything somebody offers you. I created a macro, and this is my macro. And what I have listed here is every spreadsheet that I import on a weekly basis. And then I've imported, then this is the column in the first row of where the stock list is. And so all I have to do is I created a directory. All right. One's called source, where I stick them in. The other one's called output. So it's right, and then basically I hit the button and it creates text files with the only thing sitting there is the list of the symbols. And it's really easy to add or take away. So if you have IBD or MarketSmith and you're at my meeting, just ask and I'll show you how to use it. I mean, didn't take long to put together. So let's go back into the designer. I'm all about making my life easier, and that makes my life easier. So everything else here are groups that either I have created, I've imported somebody else's list, I've got the add-on from Woodward and Brown, which I'm going to go to in a second, or I pulled something down. So I like the major market indexes. I use them for a lot of different manipulation. And so one thing that I did is I just went into the reference groups, major market indexes, and pulled it down. And by doing that, I now have in my files my own version. So I can muck with it. I could take things out. I could decide I want to add gold and a few other ETFs to this. And I can do that because it's in the user group, which means I have total flexibility. Kill those so I don't wonder what they are. The other thing I wanted to show you here is the Woodward and Brown user group. And, you know, God bless him, Ron does so much work to help us. And he creates, you know, I live in this group when I do my top-down. Major Markets Plus is just what I said. He brought down the major indexes, and then he added things like the VIX, the dollar, gold, silver, commodities, oil, etc., so that you could do a comparison of many different markets. Okay. All right, Brad, I'll do that in 1 second. You can do the same thing from all the different, you can make your own list of markets to compare. He does this for you. This one here is kind of a secret weapon. Broad market indices. You might go, well, Jeff, they look exactly the same. They do, but these are calculated from the components. Components have volume. So now you know how the S&P 500 volume was today compared to its typical volume. When you look at the index that's reported in the paper, you are not going to see volume. What that allows you to do is, since you have volume here, you can start to do manipulations that require volume. So you could go to the eye charts, and this talk is, you know, might be blowing people away. This is what you're going to go through, and we'll do some of this at the meeting and in subsequent webinars. But the eye charts involve force. Well, you can't have force on the S&P 500 without volume. So we use a calculated index. So this number 2 are calculated. Number 3 starts to give you some specific views. Again, trying to see what's working, what's not working. Sectors by industry, industry groups. This is where I do all my top-down analysis, is in number 5. You want the ETFs that represent the major things in the market instead of the indexes, things that you could buy, short, long, they sit right here. You want ETFs of the major sectors. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing. It's mostly very self-explanatory, but it's something that you want to make sure you've downloaded as an add-on. So that finishes the user group. So I had a question about MarketSmith. When I die and all the bills come in for renewal, my wife is going to be really pissed at me. Not only do I buy everything, I never cancel anything. Too much work. All right, so here's MarketSmith. So those of you that don't do investors.com, go into the launch tool. Now, I buy a lot of features, so I'm not sure that the feature I'm going to show you is that you pay for it or not. So if you don't have that feature, But down here, you have lists. So one of my favorite lists is the MarketSmith Growth 250. In fact, I would argue that you could live in this list of 250-ish stocks all day long and not have to worry about anything else. And you'll find so many of the stocks that I talk about in this list. In fact, some nights I just go through the list one after another, taking a look at them. But down here, IBD 50. And so it says 50 items, IBD 50. I go over here where the wrench is. Save as. And now I just put the IBD 50 index test 2 wherever I want to put it, and I saved it. So same way in MarketSmith as I do IBD. Question about to show or mark distribution days in the indexes. You know, that is a great question, and the answer is no and yes. We don't do that. Maybe we should do that. So that's where the no is. But, you know, you define a distribution day however you want to define it. All right? Is it higher volume? Is it so much % change? And then once you tell me, and Jim, you send me what you consider the formula for a distribution day. I know what I consider the formula of a distribution day. And I will make sure that when you come to the meeting that I can have it as a warehouse and as a chart view. We use other things that, for me, do similar things. So, for example, I want to look back here. What I want to look at. I'll look at the S&P 500. We use our own things. So, you know, if you told me, it's easy to see the distribution days, we're looking at a down day on higher volume, all right? So you got to tell me what the math looks like. You know, a down day on a volume that's above the 50-day moving average, or the highest volume down day in 4 days. And what I'll do is I'll create a view and a scan, and it'll paint them for you. These are what we call eurekas. Eurekas are our follow-through days. And we have what's called phoenixes, which is our bearish equivalent of a follow-through day, but it's probably not going to pick up all of your distribution days. So, you know, I would just want to make sure that I have the same vocabulary, and what we would then be able to do is to create a color bar to light up those dates. Also, I think you could scan for them if you really wanted to. I don't think we could number them. You'd have to count them yourself. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about later is, you know, I hope to be able to create within HGSI or help you create yourself. Yeah, I mean, I just want, yeah, the O'Neill distribution, I figure that is where you use the definition for. You know, the more exact the definition is and the less fudge factors, the easier it is to do to build a scan or to build the indicator to do that. You know, what I was going to say is, when I was at the Elder meeting 2 weeks ago, which was a lot of fun, Elder has a thing where he makes people come up and they talk about what's your A trade, and your A trade is your favorite trade and what works for you, and mine's pullback followed by momentum coming in an uptrend. And then, you know, he basically critiques them and talks about them. But one of the things that I want to do is I'm going to probably, you know, before the meeting, ask you guys to tell me what your A trades are, and then see how good are we going to do before, how good we can come to finding your A trade, scanning it and building indicators on the chart. Question about the institutional. These are, institutional has 50% holdings. So it would be any stocks that have at least 50% institutional holdings. All right, so the last thing to talk about under the database, and it's funny, I've gone a whole hour talking about the group database, but to me this is good stuff, are the smart groups. So the smart groups, very simply put, are three things combined for you. Number one, it defines the pond that you're fishing in, all right? And they may vary. Like, for example, here is a pond or a world of stocks and instruments where there were $1 to $15, and then one's all comers. So they may have different pools of stocks that they draw from, but it takes your list of stocks that you draw from, a filter, which pulls the stocks out of your big list into a long list, and then a combo ranking module, which ranks from best to worst, and then by definition cuts them off at so many. And so every night, if you have this program, whether you're a Morales fan or whomever, it's a very simple operation to go into the group database and see what stocks had Bible gap ups. Here's my Bonanza Creek that made me a happy man today. Who had pocket pivots? CMG took good care of me today, hopefully others as well. You can see in my list, and this is stuff that happened today, pull back to the 50-day moving average with a kahuna. These are the things I like to live in, all right? This is my A trade, all right? Now, it's missing a piece. I got to have a reason to buy, but this takes 8,000 stocks and pulls me down to a list of stocks that may meet my definition. I want uptrend, pull back to support, and then I want a kahuna. I don't see a kahuna here. Maybe there should have been a kahuna. Maybe it's because it's an IPO. Maybe because I don't have a kahuna on the chart, dummy. I'm talking to me, not you. Go into my charts. Right, so here's my crazy charts. So I have a squeeze. I have a mobile breakout from a squeeze and a kahuna and a stock that was in an uptrend, pulled back hard, and it pulled up to the 50. It's too beaten up for me, but it might be setting up for a long or a short, depending on what the market does. Next one, AGIC convertible. Don't even know what they do, don't care about that if I don't know. And I'll go through this looking for my perfect setup. Some nights I see them. All right, Atmel, this is kind of my perfect setup. Yeah, it's not perfect. It's below the 50. It struggled to get above the 50, but it's in a squeeze. It's above the 200, and it had a kahuna today, and it makes money and it had some earnings per share growth. BJ's just broke above the. So basically, I defined what I like, my setup. Now we're talking. Coffee Holdings, JVA. Uptrend, pullback, broke above the 50 with a kahuna, mobile breakup from a squeeze on Thursday, everything turning green, and this goes into my watch list. So I use the SMART group to help me identify, with no work, stocks that meet certain criteria. And there's a number of these, and you just have to figure out which ones you like. If you've ever used VectorBest, this is kind of like the Derby, where it's running all the scans, their searches, and telling you which are the best ones. Now, what I do here, and I'm going to jump into one of the value-added things, which is called the group inclusion filter. There will be nights that I get home and, rough day with the boat. I mean, last week we went out and the woman of the guy I share the boat with, she made us turn back in 3 minutes because it was too choppy. Oh, what a bummer. At whatever reason, I don't want to spend any time. So how do I do a very quick analysis? I look at the markets, and then I look, if I want to look at stocks, this is what I do. Quick. Tools. So this is in the Designer, under Tools, Group Inclusion Report. This is a secret weapon to find great stocks. Make group from report. We're going to call the group Web Session 2.5, whatever it is, 22.14, and we only have time to look at 15 stocks. So I put 15 down there. Now we're going to go up here and pick all of our favorites. And people watch me know I like sprinters. I like best criteria, best of Woodward and Brown, best of Woodward and Brown under 15. Demand is good, ERG is good, growth, HGS leaders, QEPs, shadow stocks, the two groups and stocks to the upside, strong EPS. I like my breakouts from a squeeze. I like my pullbacks. I like Morales and Catcher, viable gap ups, and pocket pivots. So I have so many groups I could count, but I'm not going to count. 12 groups, whatever I picked. Each group has about 50 stocks in them. I'm not looking at 600. But if you found out that if there were 12 groups and there's 10 stocks that are in 8 or more groups, and each of those 12 groups represent the best of the best, don't you think you want to go look at those stocks? Okay, that's what this is about, and I also hit 3, not a 5. So I identify the groups I want. I define the name of the file that I'm going to create, how many I want to look at before I go to bed, and I hit OK. Note to George, you should create an automation feature where once I define my groups, I don't have to redefine them every time. This is how I get things. I always come with ideas. George probably wants to kill me because I'm always publicly asking him for something. But so I've just ran it, and it's going to do a couple of things. Here's some winners. These are the stocks that at the end of the day today made themselves in the highest number of groups. Right. Some of these are stocks that we mentioned earlier. All of these are stocks that are being talked about on the board, stocks that either I've been owned or owned, I'm sure many of you. So I could look at this, or better yet, I go back to my Designer in my user group, and I find, where's today? Web Session 2. I don't really need an index, but I bet the index is going to show me superstar stocks. Yes, tight as can be, lower left, upper right. But here I have them. I've got the 15 stocks that I'm going to put a filter on and kill the index. So here's the 15 stocks. Let's just look through them. Let's say, it's 10 o'clock, you just got home from work, or time to put your kids to bed and talk with your wife. You got 15 minutes to see what's moving. Anybody think that looks good? Uptrend, pullback, major support. This line here for Morales and Catcher aficionados, that's a 5-day pocket pivot. The dark blue is a 10-day pocket pivot, which, by the way, is also a 5-day pocket pivot because you have to have 5 to get 10. The red and the pink are 10-day down and 5-day down. Have no idea if they're meaningful, but I think the same way we calculate those, we can probably do something similar on the distribution days. These down here are kahunas. Those are the big movement in percent B on a given day, and I know when I paint the color there that I need to pay attention. So I have a stock here that's been in a long squeeze on Friday, or what day is today? Today's Thursday. On Wednesday, it had a mobile breakout from a squeeze. Good follow through today, mostly green up here on my technicals. Had a pocket pivot today, way off of its high. I love that stock. Right click, quick add to group, choose, and I go back into my user groups, and I go into 518, and I had a file down here called trading stocks base, and this goes into my Thursday base that I will be looking at later. I have my own way of doing things. You ought to have your own filing system. All right, the next one, AFOP. This has been talked about on the board. Having a nice move up, all green. It's run a lot. I know this stock well. It doesn't always behave nicely. AMFSI, so even with, or AFSI, even with the financials week, we have, you can see within its specific financial group, which is, if I hit one button up, property and casualty, so it's not a bank. So, hard to tell by this, but it falls in the insurance or the property and casualty group. You can see this is a group line. The group has been strong. It's probably too far gone to me. It's at its high jump, but it's had a big move, probably too late. Eris Group, this is one that I got back into recently. Pullback. What do we call this, guys, who like Gil and Chris? That little green bar tells me it's a viable gap up. At the same time as a mobile breakout from a squeeze, huge volume, and that told me that was something to look at. So it signaled a lot of reasons there. Avis Budget Group, nothing big to report except you're in a steady uptrend. ETE is one of these high dividend payers, not that high anymore, 2.8%. It's midstream, which was really strong over the weekend. They had a couple bad days, we're up today. Point is, I don't need to look at all these. Gentherm, big move up. We've been talking about this one on the webinar for some time. Auto Parts, they make cooling seats. The point is, a little manipulation called the group inclusion filter allowed me to identify which stocks were worth looking at. Now, another thing you might want to do is, well, Jeff, how, you say these things are good. How do I know these things are good? I think that's very fair question to ask. And so one of the ways that I find out is I frequently go under tools, and I go into group performance analysis, GPA. This is another designer tool. And then I want to know performance for the week to date. So from the open on Monday until close today, I'm going to take whatever groups I want to measure, and I want to look at, compared to the S&P 500, I'm going to buy $1,000 of each stock in each group. Now I'm going to choose my groups. So I'm going to hope I did this right. And I'm going to go down here to Ian Woodward and Brown, and let's just test out some of their groups. Let's look at 1 week, Monday. These are the things that I picked over the weekend. All right, loaded over the weekend. Best of Woodward Brown, under 15, high ERG, growth, HGS 100 leaders, QEPs, shadow stocks. You know what? I'm going to look at all of them because some of them are bearish searches, the ones to the downside. Let's supplement it with the IBD 50 from the weekend and cancel them select. The Market Smith 250. What other ones? The GIF, which is what we just did, the top 30 that I did. So let's look at the pocket pivots and Bible gap ups from the SMART group. Anything else I want to throw in for comparison? All right. How about my buy watch? Oh, I hate these are things that I thought were setting up. I don't know how they've done. I hit OK. So now it's going to look at 35 groups. I designed the time period, comparing opening price on Monday to closing price on Friday, $1,000 lots of every stock. I'm going to hit OK. It'll be a web file. What did I do wrong? I'm an idiot. My wife would agree with that. Group performance analysis. Starting price on the 19th. Closing price on the 22nd. Now let's run. I thought that's what I did, but I must not have. All right, okay. So what I've done here, and obviously if you watch my webinars, you know the slide that says we don't, it's hard to find winners in a bad market. It's hard to find losers in a good market. This has been a great week. So the first thing is all lists included, almost every one of them is in the green. The interesting thing is this has been a great week for us. The S&P 500 week to date is up 0.84%. If I do my GIF All-Stars and I look at the top 30, there were 24 that I got on Friday, 24, up 3%. So it's up 3.5 times the S&P 500, 22 winners and 2 losses. I look at some of these smart groups, growth stocks up 4.6, QEPs up 4.49, best criteria up 4.2. Here's my favorite, one of my favorite buy signals is they pull back to support, but they haven't triggered yet. And then I look for them to either have a kahuna or a pocket pivot or a Bible gap up or flip their PSAR, and they were up 2.76. The IBD 50 is up 2.12. So I learned a lot from doing that test. Market Smith 250 is up 1.43. I learned that this has been a strong week. I knew that by looking at my balance. But what I also see is growth stocks are doing well. HGS 100 is up 2.53. There are only 59 stocks because it was a crappy week last week. So the GPA is another value-added secret weapon tool that I use in the Designer. So let me pull my little, anything that I talk about are fair game for questions, and as needed I'll go over again at the live meeting. So I talked about structure and smart groups. I showed you how to import either through importing a list or pasting. Exporting, look at that. I can export many different ways. One way to export, let's just take our list of 15 securities that we just got. I might want to copy symbols to clipboard text column. Okay. Now I could open up TradeStation. I could go into a screen and I can now paste. I just pasted those 15 stocks that we identified. Okay. I could have, as I did previously from Excel, I could have new text document, and we're going to call it top 15. And I can open that up, and I can paste it in there. Let me show you what's really cool. All right, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to get into the warehouse view. Let's say that you're anal like I am, and you decide that someday in the future you might want to backtest something. So you're going to save things forever. So this is the warehouse view. I'm going to go into scorecard, combo, no filter, all stocks. So there's 8,000 stocks. Pretty much every column that's in the program. I go File, Save as HTML. And let's just call it Jeffrey Kitchen Sink from Webinar. So I now have an HTML file sitting on my desktop. Now I'm going to open up Microsoft Excel. I'm going to go File, Open, Computer, Desktop. I'm going to set this for all files. I'm going to open up kitchen sink from, and there I'm going to copy it. We'll go into, and now I've created a document. And I use Paste Special, and then this one that keeps, that has all of the stocks in the database, all 8,000 of them, and in the spreadsheet form with all the data. And every week going back about 8 years, I have this data. And then lo and behold, I get a call one day from Ian asking if I had that data because he wanted to do some back testing. So I felt like I was vindicated. But that's how easy it is to dump the entire database into a savable format that doesn't take up a ridiculous amount of space. Metastock and EdgeRater. I have Metastock. So because I have Metastock, and I use the old format for my analysis, not the new format, I have a thing called Metastock data. And these are the directories that I use. I could kill data on demand cache because I don't use that, and I could kill sample. But the others I use, and they've got thousands of files in them. So turns out all I got to do, I'm going to create a new one, and we're going to call this one new folder, and we're just going to call it Jeffrey Test. And so if I go into the Designer, I could pick anything from all securities. I'll pick the NASDAQ 100. So I go into File, Equus Metastock Utilities. Since it's a new one, I'm exporting the group. I'm going to find it. So it's in C. So I find my Metastock data, Jeffrey Test, hit OK. I know it's only 100, but I could have up to 6,000 stocks in my directory. I hit OK, and I've now exported the NASDAQ 100 into Jeffrey Test, which didn't exist 15 minutes ago or 2 minutes ago. And if I wanted to, and I opened up Metastock, and let's say I wanted to, all right, come on. Oh, hold on, I had a warning. All right. I have too many monitors. Everything, I have to find things wherever they are. I have another window. I got to close windows here. Hold on one sec. Close that window. All right, now it's, all right. I could open up, actually, and there's Jeffrey Test, and there we go. We got the chart, the data I just exported is sitting there. That's how easy it is for me to move data around my programs. Yeah, I know I've been doing this a while. I get that. It takes a little bit of practice and learning the nuances. Then the other thing you might want to do is if you have EdgeRater, how do I create the lists that I use in EdgeRater? How do I create these lists here? I don't really want to do them by hand. First thing I've got to do is I've got to set HGSI as my data provider. And then when it turns out I can leave EdgeRater open, which is surprising. I'm going to bring the NASDAQ 100 in. File, ASCII Utilities. I now know I export groups as lists. NASDAQ 100. And I'm already set there, but I would go into My Documents, find EdgeRater, find Symbol List, and do a save. And then hit OK. And now when I go back into EdgeRater, there won't be anything updated yet, but I should see NASDAQ 100. And then I go over here and I do Symbol List. I highlight NASDAQ 100, hit Update Data, And now I've got my NASDAQ 100. Well, I should have it. Oh, I remember what I got to do. This is a glitch that Chris should fix. I shouldn't have to get out of that. There you go. There's my NASDAQ 100. So I can take the data and I can manipulate it and I could use it in multiple other programs. I showed you the group inclusion filter. I showed you how I use the GPA. From the strategy backtest, I'm going to leave this one for the meeting, but basically the strategy backtest says identify the group that you're interested in trading. And then we're going to, up here I didn't spend time on this. This one here is group inclusion report. This is GPA. Here's your group strategy backtest. So I'm going to choose a group, the NASDAQ 100. And let's say I want to test something out. So I have to come up with rules. So maybe my rule will be I want to enter on a Bible gap up. Or so I could go in to Morales and Catcher and so my not valid for that kind. Well, you have to find something that's valid. But basically the point here is, let's see if this one's valid. No. You pick filters that you might consider good for finding high quality stocks. So I'm going to go back to something here. See if this one works. Now, I'm not going to spend much time here. We'll do it live. But what you can do is you can pick the group that you want to scan of stocks. You can choose your entry rule and your exit rule. You can set different stops, and then you can run the test, and it will give you a report. I did one earlier, but I don't think I kept it. That will give you an idea of how something performs. It's kind of simple. It's not a sophisticated portfolio modeling tool, but it gives you the chance to quickly test something to see if it actually works. Within TradeStation, I mostly do what I showed you, which is cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste. In fact, in TradeStation, one of the things that I do is I manage, as I show every time on my webinar, which I guess is shameless promotion to sell my indicators, is I put together a list of super stocks that I want to monitor on a weekly basis. And I actually put that together in HGSI and in the Designer, but not up top, in the bottom, I create lists and I try and get one that's the right size, which is about 700 stocks. And that's the list. So I have this list created, file, copy, text column, then I bring it over and I paste it in here, and that's the list that I will use during the week. Within Thinkorswim, we created a couple of files. Let's use the Gilmo Weekend Shorts. Within TOS, I'm going to go to Market Watch, and I'm going to go on the little gear, and I'm going to import, and it can either be, I'm loading it, and I'm going to go into desktop because that's where it's sitting, and I'm going to find what I just created. It's going to be in the last, what I call it, Gilmo Weekend Shorts. Okay. So one of the symbols didn't work for whatever reason, but let's see if the other ones came in. Right, something I did didn't make sense, but that's basically what I do is, we try it again, let's just look at my buy list. Let me do that. So I haven't updated this week. I was trading in TradeStation mostly, but I could just go in here, import, find the file that says Scott buys. Actually, it may just be buys, but let's see. Open, replace, okay. And these are the stocks that on my weekend review that looked attractive to me. VIPs got killed today, but for the most part, these stocks were up today, and this is only one day, and I looked at them 4 days ago. But basically, the ability to take a list, save it as a text document, and then import it is extremely easy. I believe you could actually just paste the list in as well. I've gone through, I think, everything that I put in my presentation. So at this point, let me see if anybody has some questions that I have not yet addressed. Every time I do a call, it's an hour and a half or longer. I don't see any questions that I haven't answered. Yeah, thanks, Brad, for your comment. There's so much power in HGSI, and to me, I use it as the center of my trading life, and by that I mean I have to have a common place where I can build out my watch list, whether I put them into TradeStation or into Thinkorswim, and then how I manage those watch lists. And to me, HGSI is that place. My desktop looks horrible here because I have to change the resolution for the web program or else you'll never see anything. But I actually use HGSI, I use Magenta Trader, and I use TOS and TradeStation. Everything else, if it went away tomorrow, my trading performance would not change. But EdgeRater, I have to put in and that keep as well. That's all I need. I love toys and gizmos and gadgets. Wait till you see my auto trading program for TradeStation, which I've been working on, and it might be available. It is the coolest thing ever. But that's a different story altogether. We'll do this again next week. I know from history that repetition is how we learn things. Next week I'm going to spend time looking at most likely the ranking module, and then the following week will be the warehouse module. And once we get done with those, then we'll get some more applied stuff of using them to find stocks, so that when we get to the meeting in, and I'm really excited about the meeting in about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, we'll hit the ground growing. So y'all have a great night. Look forward to seeing you. Today was I love today. Who God only knows what tomorrow is. I won't do as well today because I get nervous. Not nervous. I get careful, and after I get a lot of ups in some of my calls, I start selling. I short calls that are a little bit further out, so I lock in some profits, and that diminishes the return. But over the long run, it keeps me making money instead of giving it all back. So you all have a great night, and we'll see you all soon. Most likely it'll be Thursday next week. I'll put something out on Sunday. I might move it to Wednesday. But it'll be Wednesday or Thursday. Good night, everybody. Take care. And thanks for all for coming on.